So we are less than 24 hours away, depending on when you're watching this, from Canada taking on Mexico in the CONCACAF Nations League finals. And earlier today, we had some breaking news. You know how it is. Whenever you have a deadline, 1,000 things drop at the end of the day, and you gotta rush to get everything done. The Canadian Shield, which is a 4-team, 2-match friendly in June, is taking place in Toronto. This is put on in part with MLSC, with Canada Soccer, and it's meant to create the idea of more competitive games right before the Gold Cup. And let's talk about this really quickly. So we'll read straight from the website. This June, 4 men's national soccer teams will go head-to-head in the Canadian Shield, a new 4-country international tournament to take place in Canada, celebrating the global game. The new tournament will also prepare teams for the biggest tournaments in the world to be hosted in North America next summer, with 6 of those matches to be held in Toronto. Matches will be held on June 7th and June 10th at BMO Field, featuring the men's national teams of Canada, Ukraine, Côte d'Ivoire, and New Zealand. And is being presented by MLSC, Sport 5, and MIB Sports Agency. Now, there's a bunch of quotes, there's a bunch of different things. So here it is. The matches will feature Canada, who's ranked 31st in the world, Ukraine were 25th, Côte d'Ivoire were ranked 46th, and New Zealand ranked 89th. Will be sold as double headers, with tickets for each day giving access to both games. Full tournament ticket packs will go on sale to the general public on March 21st. So that is in 2 days at BMO Field at 2 p.m. So this means, now we can talk about a little bit of things. I think this opens a lot of the aspect. Now, we know that it's going to be a tournament style, but only 2 games played, meaning 2 matchups, 3 points for a win, 1 win for a draw, 1 point for a draw, etc. This being so close to the Gold Cup makes me wonder, and also makes me think. With the games happening on June 7th and June the 10th, the schedule is Canada v Ukraine, and then Côte d'Ivoire v New Zealand on the 7th, and then Ukraine versus New Zealand, and then Canada versus Côte d'Ivoire on the 10th. The Gold Cup is scheduled to start on the 14th. So this could be the tune-up friendlies before the Gold Cup, which, with how the schedule works this year, specifically this year, we already have the Club World Cup that's taking place this summer. Could this be a way to get in the first team? We're all just speculating. How are they going to use this team, especially for Canada? I think this might be reason to maybe have the first team for Toronto, and then you have your Gold Cup team go to Vancouver for their matchups. It's a possibility. Also with this, there's talk that they want to make this an annual tournament, whether that's annually or biannually or every other year, basically. And if they do that, we had discussions, I had a conversation with Andre Schaffner just on the idea of maybe a camp poutine. We saw Camp Cupcake, as it's called in the States, the January camp. If Canada is going to try to do this semi-regularly to regularly, does this kind of eliminate the need for a January camp? If you're going to try to do a June camp, have 2 matchups there, could that open the window for that possibility? I think it most certainly could. And if you're going to do that, how do you look at that? And I kind of mentioned it earlier, right? The idea of, with the Gold Cup so close, with the Club World Cup happening this summer, it's going to be curious to see how Canada wants to manage their roster. If they're going to try to bring as strong as a first team as they can. I know some teams, FIFA's really trying to get this big Club World Cup to be a thing. I don't know if it goes through. We'll see. But under the assumption that FIFA bullies these clubs into making them bring as much of a first team as possible, that means for Canada, they're probably missing for sure Eustachio, they're missing Davies, possibly missing a player of the likes of Jonathan David. Do you use those 2 friendlies in the Canadian Shield as a possibility to get the full squad? Or do you use that instead of a tune-up for the team? Or you just use it as your Gold Cup roster as an opportunity to play through to get them ready up to level? Because you can make the argument that could be a good test trial run for the players you're bringing in for the Gold Cup, having them play against tough competition, because it could be argued that they won't play a tougher team than the teams they're playing before the Gold Cup. And if they can stand up to those two teams, or however they play, perhaps that gives them then, okay, we can now run and play against other sides and move forward. So I'm very curious to see how they want to approach this, both from the Canada Soccer preparing for the World Cup, but also Canada Soccer preparing for the Gold Cup. It could be very curious to see what they want to do, how they want to approach this. Also, if they move forward with this annually, does this become our June window? Maybe we could see some players. Maybe it's you use that to see some of the players pushing the depth of the team, give them the opportunity. And if you can always get this caliber team, maybe that's what you need. We'll have to wait and see. We'll see what it looks like. Tickets go on sale on Friday, which means we will all be searching for tickets and life will be great. We'll see what happens. But let's take a look at it. Let's talk about it. Guys, let me know. This is great for Canada. If you are Canadian and you're excited, what excites you about this? What are some of your concerns? Does it mean that possibly the only competitive games, because we know also, it brings the conversation of friendlies and games around Canada. We know Montreal is getting their friendlies as the send-off for the World Cup. You know, MLSE is getting this. Does this mean that Vancouver is just getting the World Cup matchups and or maybe some friendlies afterwards? We always talk about Vancouver. Probably the second grass goes in, Vancouver becomes much more of a desirable location just because they have the capacity. And yes, I'm not trying to turn this into, in Canada, a East Coast versus West Coast bias conversation, but it is something that we've heard and has been consistent. The players do like playing in Toronto, whether that's the grass or just the convenience of the location. Now, if you add grass to Vancouver, I think the Federation would love to go out there. But equally, I think if you have grass in that facility, the only real question would be, which opponents would you want to bring? Because if you're going to play in Vancouver, I think it would make much more sense to lean towards getting maybe the South Koreas of the world, the Japans of the world, Asian countries there where travel for them isn't too difficult. But for Canadians, that's an additional 3 hours out west. But these are all things that logistically I'm sure they're thinking about, they'll figure out. But we'll leave it off at that. The Canadian Shield, a new tournament to bring world-class international football to Toronto in preparation for the World Cup in 2026. How do you feel? Are you excited? What are your concerns? Let me know. And as always, I'm going to stop talking right here.